Hello and welcome to another Switzer update on January 25, one day before Australia Day. And it's also a day when inflation is released, and it comes as the federal government, or the federal parliament more correctly, has a select committee looking into why prices are rising so rapidly. It's basically an inquiry into why inflation is so high. Now, let me throw in the point that inflation is falling and our performance with inflation has been pretty good. This is called the Select Committee on the Cost of Living. I prefer it to be called the Inflation Killing Committee, but politicians don't have that kind of marketing good sense, or maybe even the passion to do what we really do need to see happen, that is, inflation be killed. But they are going to be looking at the major companies. They'll be grilling them: Woolworths, BP Australia, Ampol, Woolworths, all supermarkets, any company that's a major price setter in the country will probably come under the microscope of this particular committee. Now, I guess the fair question is, why do we have inflation and what will this committee be looking into? Well, we've got supply chain factors driving up the prices of consumers' goods at the checkout and right across the country really, and this comes post-pandemic. We've got rising interest rates, which is actually used to bring inflation down, but in the short term, it actually pushes inflation up. Rents go up because landlords have to get even because they're now paying higher interest bills on their loans. We've got rising wages and related costs. The fact that people are working from home is probably reducing productivity, and productivity is a good way of reducing costs. So there's all those sort of things working at the moment. And of course, soaring power costs in particular have really ripped into the inflation rate. Now, it also comes at a time when the Australian Energy Commission says that the government's price cap on gas will not instantly deliver price cuts to consumers. And that's what we've actually seen. The government promised a $275 saving on power bills, but they've actually gone up. And so that's going to be a bit of pressure for the Albanese government to actually deliver on that promise. And this committee is going to be very interesting to see who it points the finger at as the exploiters, because some companies are definitely price gouging consumers because of the post-pandemic situation they find them in. People complain about airline prices, and that's particularly since the pandemic. And a lot of people believe the airlines are doing a lot better than they should. So this committee is going to be looking at the profiteering of various companies, and it could have a positive effect on inflation. One thing having a positive effect on Australian inflation is the fact that the Aussie dollar has been rising. This morning it's 70.42 US cents. When inflation was at its worst, it was below 60 cents. So that rise in the A dollar makes a lot of imports cheaper, and that helps with the inflation rate going forward. Having a look at the markets overnight, the Dow Jones was up 104 points, S&P 500 only down 0.07%, and NASDAQ down 0.27%. So they really are trying to hold the big gains we've seen in the stock market so far. And at the moment, America's sort of jostling with, okay, inflation is starting to come down. Earnings is not really impressing at the moment. It's only early days, but at the moment, those earnings for big US companies aren't coming through as well as many people would hope. There's also fear that the previous interest rate rises could be causing a recession in the US. At the moment, the consensus is there's going to be a short, mild recession, but things could change, and that would really have an impact on stock prices, as will next week's meeting of the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve, of course, is like our RBA, and they're meeting on interest rates, and the expectation is they'll increase by 0.25%, and they'll say stuff that will make the market believe that the worst of the rate rises in the US are behind and the end is near. If that message comes through, the stock market will really like it. If the message is far more negative, the Federal Reserve doesn't believe what the market's been thinking over the last 2 or 3 weeks as stock prices have been going up, then we'll see a sell-off. And that sell-off will be notable. I don't think it will take us anywhere back to where we were last year, but a sell-off is a possibility if the Federal Reserve, particularly the Federal Reserve, is worried about the positivity in the stock market that might actually keep inflation higher than they really want it to be. So next week's going to be a really important one to see what the Federal Reserve has to say. all up, I still believe that what we've been seeing in the first few weeks of this year, and in fact since October 3, the market has been going up. I think it's a preview of what we'll see over the course of 2023. You might just need patience to see some big gains for the stocks you own or the indices you're investing in. I'm Peter Switzer. Thanks for joining us.